Did you catch that natural disaster Netflix series Into the Night? There are now 2 seasons of it, but it's also spawned a spin-off of sorts. Yakamoz S-245 follows a different set of people trying to outrun some wonky radiation from the sun by hiding in the depths of the ocean in a submarine. Should this Turkish series be on your binge list? After disaster strikes Earth, a marine biologist on a submarine research mission must fight to survive with the crew as a conspiracy comes to light. Alright, so let's get this out of the way right up front. The first season of Into the Night was engaging and it hooked me in, but it wasn't great television. I mean, it was cheesy at points and even overly dramatic, but I was still having a lot of fun with it. The confined space and the urgency of the story helped to make it exciting, but it still wasn't amazingly written television. And that's okay. I think that's important to understand because as we enter this new series, it follows a lot of the same blueprints for executing the story. We got this group of biologists and researchers who were making a test dive in a small submarine into a very deep trench when the sun's polarity shifts, sending deadly radiation rays and killing just everything that's in its path on the surface of Earth. They begin their dive when it's dark, and they resurface about 15 hours later, when it's dark again. That's when they notice that everyone else that stayed behind on their main ship has disappeared. As they go to find the crew based on a video message that was left behind for them, the researchers come across the crew of a Turkish Navy submarine, the Yakamoz S-245. After a bunch of drama and some people not having the best of days, the researchers come aboard the Yakamoz in order to dive way down into the ocean and avoid the rising sun's radiation. And just like with Into the Night, the show uses the urgency of the built-in time limits to add tension and anxiety, and then puts all of the characters into these tight and confined spaces to maximize the drama and the discomfort. There's also a brewing mystery that begins to be revealed, but it comes about fairly slowly, just eked out here and there across the 7 episodes. Now, while the first few episodes do have some action, their main purpose is to build out the characters and get us really invested in them. But that doesn't mean that we like them all. I mean, there are some that we're supposed to love to hate. But to have any sort of feeling about them, I think, is important in a drama like this. As the show goes along, and after it hits about that halfway mark, the story really begins to pick up and create something that I found much more compelling. The mystery angle was focused on way more, and I love how suspicions are raised among just about everybody. It provides a story element where we don't know who can or should be trusted, and this makes for a more dramatic narrative, and one that I was becoming hooked on, despite some massive story conveniences that are present really only to increase the drama. The first episode of this one was pretty rough. The graphics were not that impressive, and even the acting was fairly stiff and unimpressive. And because we're just getting to know the characters, most of them come across more grating than sympathetic in that first episode. Now, luckily, the show did improve. Or maybe it was just my tolerance that grew. But either way, as the episodes went along, I was having fun while watching. Something that I appreciate in this is that the show isn't afraid to harm its characters. There are more than a few times when I was surprised by something that would happen to a character. Now, each of the episodes moves fairly quickly because they're each under 50 minutes, but also because when the sub dives into the depths when the sun is out, we don't see all of that monotony that comes with people being in a submarine. If there's drama or action, the show displays it, but otherwise, we'll watch the sub dive down as the sun rises, have a small and quick scene within the sub, and then show it popping back up when the sun is down. I like that this isn't happening in a vacuum when it comes to the Into the Night series. And there are elements here and there, especially towards the latter half of the season, that shows how these are tied together. Now, when there's action in this show, sometimes it's a little impressive. And mostly there are quick cuts if a fight breaks out, but there are some moments where we get to see more of the action uninterrupted by a new angle. But within these, most of the time some disbelief needs to be suspended because the consequences of actions are much less than what they would be in reality. But that's okay, because I wasn't watching this for ultra-realism, just a bit of escapism, which it provides. Now, the acting varies amongst the cast. Some of the players were really able to draw me in with their performances, making me feel for them. Others became very grating, and the acting was more stiff, which then made the characters a little distracting. But on the whole, the characters are captured pretty well, providing the right amount of bravado, mystery, hubris, or sometimes compassion. As the season winds down, the story itself cranks up the intrigue, diving headlong into some mysterious aspects, but then frustratingly providing very little explanation. Now, I think you'll have a greater understanding if you have watched Into the Night before seeing this, especially with how the two shows intersect, but even if you haven't seen that show yet, you can go into this one and be fine. I mean, it is a standalone story that then catches up with the other series. I wouldn't totally classify this as a guilty pleasure show, but I also wouldn't count it as a great show either. I mean, it's sort of bad TV that's fun and enjoyable to watch. The story is basic for a lot of it, pitting our characters against challenges and inconveniences with the result of creating anxious situations. This is effective especially because there's always a built-in time limit to a quest or a search in the race against the oncoming sunrise. The confined spaces of the submarine also help to increase the tension between our characters, which then creates scenarios that are dramatic and sometimes exciting. If you enjoyed the Into the Night series, this is a good parallel narrative to show what is happening to others during the catastrophic events. The graphics are passable, as is a lot of the dialogue, but there are also large portions of dialogue that feel way too simplified or even unnatural. Now, maybe that's just with the translation and the subtitles, because I don't speak Turkish, so I'm willing to believe that the dialogue is actually written better in that native language than it comes across in the English subtitles. But even if it isn't, I was still engaged in the story and I became hooked on the characters and their journey. I didn't go into this show expecting greatness, only an entertaining escape. And that's what I got. There's sex, no nudity, a lot of profanity, and a ton of violence. I give Yakamoz S-245 3 out of 5 couches. So are you a fan of the End of the Night series? Have you been looking forward to checking out this new parallel story? I mean, I'd love to hear what you think of the show when you get a chance to see it. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching.